Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Entra Chat. And I'm repeating this for the first time, for the second time, because I forgot to hit record the first time. I have a fantastic guest today. She's someone who I really admire and someone who I wanted on the chat for a long time. I asked her even before I started the first batch of recordings for Entra Chat. And I'm super glad that Erica can now join us. Erica has an amazing career arc. She started in pharmacy, and now she's in security, cybersecurity, protecting tenants, uh, defending tenants, and knows a lot about Entra. And what I really like about Erica is all the questions she asks on X, Twitter, is where I sort of met up with her, and really practical guidance and advice that Erica gives. So I want to get her on the chat so she can share a bit more about how she learns and all of the knowledge she has, and various tricks and tips that she has come through. She has some amazing stories to tell, and I'm sure a lot of us can learn more at the end of the chat about how to better protect your tenant, and what are the things that bad guys are looking for, and so on. So Erica, welcome to the show. Sorry you had to repeat some of the stuff again.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. I'm a big fan of the show. I'm honored that you would invite me because you have so many talented people here that come on the show and talk about real life stories, what it is to manage Microsoft Cloud and Active Directory. And so, yes, so thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You started in pharmacy, right? Like, so how did that happen? How did you get into that space?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I graduated pharmacy school in 2009 and I went into the workforce and everything was dominated by the digital world at that time in 2009. The drugs that I would order we would have the password on the computer where everybody
Right.
shared the password and went on to the
Yeah.
supplier. And, 3 days later, we would get the drugs. We had our inventory systems, we had our pharmacy management systems. And I was just fascinated that the digital world was so utilized, and I knew nothing about computers or how they worked. So I
Right.
went back to,
For me, it's fascinating because when I was in school in like grade 10, that's what the curriculum I did. We had chemistry, and I hated it so much because for me it didn't have any logic. It was like I had to memorize a lot of things and like just memorize facts, and I was like I worked better if there's some logic to it. Like I preferred math and physics because you could like start somewhere and end somewhere, and there's a journey. But I don't know, maybe it's wrong, but I felt chemistry was, "Oh, I just need to just remember there's so many things I need to remember," and I hated it. So I actually dropped out. Like I didn't do chemistry. Did all the other
yeah,
subjects.
that's funny. Chemistry was my favorite, and I had a very
Oh,
opposite experience with
right.
it. I thought that it made a lot of sense because it was all algebra pretty much and calculus,
Oh, maybe
and working.
I didn't make the connection.
Well, when you get into organic chemistry, you learn how to push electrons, and if you learn how to push electrons and you have your modeling kits and whatnot, then you can basically visualize. I can close my eyes and visualize how interactions are working based on the knowledge
Okay.
that you get. And anyway, we're going a little off
Nice.
topic here,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating for me, like the difference in the path that you took and
Yeah.
the path that I did. So
Yeah.
cool. Okay. So you did that, and then how did you end up in cybersecurity? Like it's a
Yeah.
vast
Yeah. So
range,
I went
right?
back to school for computer science. My first programming language was C++, which is why I don't like to program. But now with AI, I love to program because it makes
That's
it
the
so
wrong
much
language.
easier.
Yeah. I started with GW Basic, the basic that Bill Gates wrote, right? And I loved it. Like you could do so much. It was just like print and run and go tos. It was so
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
and it was easy to get easy to make the computer do what you wanted. And I really fell in love with programming from that point.
Yeah, I didn't have the same experience with programming.
See, we swapped over from chemistry to programming.
Yeah, yeah. So, I also did digital logic, which was really cool. I liked that a lot better than C++ programming. And I continued on in my pharmacy career, but I continued on a self-learning path because I was fascinated with IT and computers and networks and software and how it worked. In 2014, I went to a DEF CON because there was a hacker conference in town, and I was like, that's interesting. I wonder what this is all about. So it was $200, and I paid my way in and then went to some talks, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And these people are like me, they get into the weeds about topics, you know?
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, so I left there feeling very inspired and continued to learn IT by reading books like A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, CASP, CISP, CEH. I read all of those books, I think in like 2014, 2015. And then in 2016, I went to another DEF CON, and that was kind of like the trigger point for me that began my fascination because I went to the talk where they released Bloodhound and
Right.
6 Degrees
Andy
of
Robbins,
Domain
and was it
Admin.
with Andy? And
Yeah, Andy
yeah,
Robbins and Will
yes.
Schroeder and CPT Jesus. I don't remember his real name, but anyway,
Right.
they were all up there on the stage and they were demoing Bloodhound, and I was like, God, that's fascinating, and I
Yeah.
gotta learn how to do that. And I left there very inspired, and I did learn how to do that, and I knew I was going to learn how to do that. So anyway, how I learned how to do that was playing Hack the Box. I started playing Hack the Box in 2017. Um, when
What
it
is
was
Hack the Box? For people, I know a lot of IT admins, they're like, what's Hack the Box? What do you mean
uh,
by that?
it's the best game ever on the internet.
Right.
So it's a hacking game, and basically it's very similar to when it first came out anyway. It's very similar to penetration testing. So you set up a VM and you get the OpenVPN connection pack, and you connect to the network and on zero, and then they give you an IP and then you hack the box. So, it starts out with a port scan. You got to figure out what ports are open, what services are running, and then there's always a way in, right? And then eventually, you hack the box, and the goal is to get, a user flag and a root flag. Or, excuse me, on Windows, it would be, system. You try to
System.
get a
Yeah.
system.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I started playing
Then
that,
you,
and
right.
and
And you got really
that
good at it.
really good at it. I had a lot of friends that were really good at it that helped me, and I became skilled in their presence. So so yeah, and I learned a lot because I didn't just, wait for people to give me the answers like a lot of people do. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you still learn in the process. But I was all constantly in Microsoft documentation, constantly blog posts, reading blog posts, and trying to understand what these security researchers, this wizardry that they did to be able to come up with these vulnerabilities. And I don't know if you know about Hack the Box, but they were very focused on configuration related vulnerabilities. So there was a lot of machines and labs that had CVEs as well. But most of it is based on configuration related vulnerabilities
Yes.
that you
Yeah.
exploit. So
Yeah.
there's no like, you can't just patch it. You
Yes.
have to go
Yeah.
in and
Yeah.
reconfigure things, or put in mitigations and controls
Yes.
to be able to remedy those situations. And so I think that was a really important point into what led me into what I do now, which is focused on configuration related vulnerabilities and Microsoft Cloud and an Active Directory. But yeah, I played these labs and these pro labs that were like mini corporate environments with multiple domains and trusts set up, and they had file servers and databases and enterprise software and, the stuff that
Right.
you would see in a real organization, but without
Right.
all of the user traffic, right?
Right.
So I did that for several years before I even started pen testing. And so when I went into pen testing, it was very, very easy for me. I was like, "Wow, this is easy."
Yeah, it's easier than the hack the box.
It was a lot easier than Hack the Box. I was like, all of these pro hackers, and they're talking about being, "I'm a real hacker," and I'm like, "This is so easy."
So how did you get into the Entra and the Microsoft cloud
Yeah,
side of
no, that's a
things?
great question. Thank you. My boss came to me in 2022 and said, "I want you to do a Microsoft Cloud assessment." I said, "I don't know Microsoft Cloud." And he was like, "But you have an offensive security background. You think like a hacker, so you'll be able to do it. You'll be fine." And I was like, "Okay." So I went on to GitHub and I looked at, tried to find the tool repositories that penetration testers use in the cloud, and I found some, and I did the password spraying and all of that stuff. And in 2022, a lot of organizations they didn't have MFA. They didn't even have regular MFA. And today we're going to talk about other things beyond
Yes.
MFA. So my first Microsoft Cloud M365 assessment, I got global admin, which was really cool. It was a common configuration error that I see in almost every org that I've consulted with, and that is M365 public groups. They had set up a SharePoint site when they were onboarding their tenant, and they had a bunch of accounting information and Excel spreadsheets in there, and they had they had passwords in there. They had account passwords to Box, passwords to other technologies that they had in the environment. They had their EIN, corporate IDs. It would have been
It's
like
great.
a Beck actor's dream, you know?
I can tell an interesting story. I worked in a company and the search was really bad. And then we introduced a new search platform. And then it could search all of SharePoint and show things. And then suddenly someone found his name. He just searched for his name. And, some HR complaints that he had made or someone made against him, they were all like public. Like it was not meant to be there. And then, so he raised a big thing. And you know what the fix was? They said, we can't go and fix all these permissions. It's too much work. Can you just turn off search and go back to the old search that we had, which didn't work? Like
Yeah,
people, it's so hard to get folks to go and fix the permissions because it's like a weed, right? Like there's so many sites, and we can say like, hey, like you found that it's easy, you found it, but the fix is actually they have now even in SharePoint Online, terabytes and terabytes of data and sites, and they need to then go find the owner of it, and like there's a whole lot of work. It's not something you can just flick a switch and fix it. You don't want to
yeah.
cause, business disruption. So it is a hard problem for, the other side of the defensive side of the admin
It
teams. But
is.
yeah, this is a really good example of, why it's important. Even though it's a hard thing to do, you will find ways to get global admin through that.
Yeah, data is king. And there's always credentials. I mean, just like in Active Directory, how there's unprotected credentials on shares, even with,
Yes.
third-party solutions that go in and crawl the shares and constantly look for that. We still find unprotected credentials on shares and Active Directory, and it's no different in M365, and now you have all these cloud services, and you think about SharePoint, and you think about OneDrive, and you think about Teams, and people don't realize that if you think of them like a share in Active Directory where you have to set up who can access these shares. It's the same thing in M365. And there's just as many, if not more, unprotected
Yes.
credentials in
Yeah.
M365. And it's something that's not really talked about, as much. But, privacy is really important in all of M365 services. And you have to set up, private sites and private teams and not have those M365 public groups unless they are intended to be public, and all of the data that is stored within those groups and teams chats and whatnot is intended to be
Yes.
public data. Because if anyone gets compromised in your organization, you know, if it's an M365 public group and the data is within that, then anybody is going to have access to it across the organization. So you need to protect it, but it's not easy, like you said. Some of the most simple things on the
Yes.
defensive side are very,
Yeah.
very difficult because it's just like you
Yes.
said, you have to
Yeah.
find, who owns the site. And not only that, most organizations, especially the larger organizations, are
Yeah.
still very siloed. So you have to go through all of the
Yes.
stakeholders.
Correct. Yeah, and their
And
priorities are different, and they're focused on making money, and they're going like, "Why are you troubling me with this when I need to do the sales and bring in revenue? If not, this won't exist in the first place."
exactly,
So
exactly. It's very user experience and security is a very, very delicate balance because when you impede the users too much, it
yes,
slows down the organization's productivity quite a bit. So you have to be very cognizant and do everything that you can to make it effortless for them to where they don't feel an impact, and that's very difficult. So,
exactly. Yes, yeah. There's always a two sides, and I think that's what makes it interesting as well. When you're looking at it from the offensive side, you go like, "Oh, that's dumb. Like, why did they do it? Like, they should not have had a share," and, and so
yeah.
on. So, but it's hard to. It's like herding cats, right? Like, there are so many different accounts and passwords, and people do the easier thing. Like today, I'm sure a lot of people just share credentials maybe on chat or on email. They think email is secure, but then knowing little that someone can really search across your entire email repository to find those passwords with those
Yeah.
terms.
And teams, people sharing like client secrets and, let's talk about application onboarding a little
Priorities.
bit, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So when applications are getting onboarded, a lot of times vendors, and this is really bothersome to me, but some vendors won't have the ability to set up, a certificate and private key. And they require you to have a client secret, right? And so those
yes,
client secrets then become your responsibility to secure. And if they're shared in a Teams, then
yes,
attackers can just use regular expressions to search across Teams and then find those client secrets. And then you have an application service principal being compromised, which is not going to follow your named locations. It's not going to abide by the named locations, I should say. An attacker could literally sign in from anywhere as the service
yes,
principal, and then the detections, if you don't have an SSPM like AppOmni or Obsidian, then it's going to be incredibly hard for you to detect that unless you have custom detections. So, sharing credentials is very, very common in M365, especially with client secrets, and even with the certificate and keys. Like some vendors, they'll have you create them yourself and then send them over to the vendor or send them over to the engineer to put them in and onboard the application. But then you as the admin, you still have that certificate and key, right?
yes, yeah,
And what if it's in your OneDrive?
yes,
Do you see what I'm saying? So, like,
yes,
unprotected
yeah,
credentials across shares, like, you have API keys, you'll find all kinds of stuff across M365. You can search for it all in Purview. They have, out of
yes,
the box sits to help you
exactly,
do that
yeah.
and information protection. So you can find them, you know. But But anyway, that's another discussion.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's, I mean, that's like, so even with the app boarding, an interesting story. Like just today, I was on a call with someone, and their app, something in the with the provisioning side of things, it failed, and they were looking into it, and one of the tokens they had given for the app that was registered in Entra, the token had expired, and so a secret. It was like a long secret, and so this person was asking the other app owner, like, why did it expire? When does it expire? Like, how do we make sure that we know in advance? He said, don't worry, I've set the expiry to 10 years now, so it won't happen. Yeah, that's like like it just happened today, and I was like shaking my head. And you need to now go through and, like, educate them, like, don't do that. It's,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it still happens today. So there's a
It
lot
does.
of work we all have to do to educate the community and the industry on in these things, right? So
Yeah, definitely. Don't put them in M365. Just don't.
yes,
Don't share
yeah,
them in Teams. Don't share them
yeah,
in SharePoint. Don't make a Confluence site with all of the credentials for the application registrations. Don't do that.
yeah. And
Because
even with certs, it's confusing because, yeah, you have the private and the public, and they just, it's, for some people, it just confuses them, and they're like, oh, I'm sharing, I need to give the public key. So some end up just sending the private key as well to the other party.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Application
challenging. Yeah.
onboarding is a lot of organizations, the IT department or a lot of organizations will call it digital whatever. Their goal is to get everything up and running, and that is still the
Yes.
way that
Yeah.
it is. And they
Yeah.
have very tight deadlines. People expect them to do this fast. There's not a
Yes.
lot of time for them to really think about the security of the situation. And a lot of
Correct. Yeah.
organizations won't undergo a security review before they
Mm.
onboard an app, which they should. But,
Yes.
budget, I understand that a lot of organizations, they don't have the budget to do it, but there's things that you need to look at, like the token flows and the API permissions and
Yes.
how it's being onboarded, where the client secret is going to be stored, or the certificate. And you have to look at all of the
Yes. Yeah.
information so that you can understand your attack surface and your blast radius if a account becomes compromised, right? So,
Yeah, it's definitely like, if last week's podcast that we shared was all about app governance, and like, bringing, it's a lot to do with educating the community and the folks who are given this work, because they come, as you said, right, from a background of get things done, get the app deployed, move on to the next app. Their only thing is they are not really security folks in the sense they come from maybe M365 digital workplace, and so they're just relying on the cybersecurity team to do that job and do it. But
great.
if everyone is educated, it really helps them make
Yeah.
sure they are doing it right the first time.
Yeah, and then not only that, I mean, larger organizations, they like some of the global banks, they'll have a bigger process of doing an entire security review where the security team will go in and pick apart and try to figure out every different way that an attacker might exploit it, right? And then they'll create these reports and threat models and then send it to risk, and then, they evaluate all of the stuff that the security team says. And that's a really good practice. Not a lot of organizations can afford to do that, but they should really find the budget because everybody has M365. Everybody has applications onboarded.
Yes.
Everybody uses Entra. So not
Yeah.
everybody. There's the Google Suite space. I don't work in the
Yes.
Google
Yeah.
Suite space, but most organizations, we all know that M365 has the dominant market share, and because of that, it makes them a target because attackers know that's where the data is. They know that if they get in there, they might be able to move to on-prem Active Directory. They can probably move to Azure. There's a lot of different pivot points for them. And then
Yes. Yeah.
also the data is money, right? To them,
Yes.
data is money. So they want to go directly to the places where the data is. So you have to do things to try to protect the
Yes.
data and decrease the blast radius if accounts get compromised.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So tell us, so like what should like Entra admins do, the easy things they can do to protect their tenants?
Yeah.
Easy in the sense the things that are, low hanging fruits that'll give them the best bang for
The
buck, sort of.
low-hanging fruits from entry. Yeah, because everything starts through identity, right? All the attacks
Yes.
come in through identity. And so when you're looking at your organization, you want to focus on the initial access vectors first, right? And then move inward. Kind of follow the kill chain. And in Entra, in the cloud with phishing, right? Most
Yes.
organizations get phished, right? So there there's about 5 different attack vectors in phishing. So you have illicit consents, which is application onboarding, where the attacker is going to trick a user into consenting to an application so that they can get rights to the tenant based on whatever API permissions are granted to their data.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
On
device
that
code.
one, I remember you tweeting once about how easy it was using Teams as a vector to send a message and get people to click on things.
Yep. Yep. So Teams is a big one. And the reason why Teams is a big one is because impersonation, right?
Yes.
So I'll tell you a story. At my last org, um, I was testing some Teams impersonation. So I set up my public Teams account with a Microsoft personal account, right? And then I changed the name to my CISO's name. And
Right.
when you send a meeting invite to people, then it would come up as, oh, my CISO is inviting me
Right.
to a meeting. It could be
Right.
anybody. It could be the IT
Yes.
department, but it's very easy to impersonate. And then since I'm the meeting organizer and a public Teams client, then I control the team. So if I can get
Right.
somebody to join the meeting and
Right.
I effectively impersonate them, which is very easy now with AI, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If I can get them to click on the link and join the meeting, then I can have them download malware from Teams. I can have them download signed binaries, which are not going to be detected because they're
Right.
signed binaries, right? Most
Yeah.
organizations don't have effective controls in EDR with RMM tools. So that's another common
Right.
vector is they get somebody to download an RMM tool. You could do follow on with device code phishing. Say, I need you to relog in so that I can fix your email account, right?
Right. Yeah. So
So,
Teams has that wall, right? Where if it's someone new, you see the wall. But I guess if you do a calendar, like if you do a meeting invite, you sort of avoid that, right? Like a user will never see that. They'll just jump on the meeting, and then the meeting chat shows up, and then you control what links you can share from there, and the files.
exactly. And then it's kind of like a hacker's dream if you think about it, because we don't have to go through all of the hard work of trying to get past the Entra controls, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the problem. And there's ways to harden teams to prevent against those types of things, but those are not you can't implement those controls because I tried and I failed because it
Yes.
makes teams unusable.
Yeah.
So
That's true. Yeah.
I think that Teams will continue to be a problem, even though there's things like Teams app. When you have somebody impersonating, somebody from the organization, like I said, signed binaries are not going to get caught, and you're going to have to depend on your EDR solutions for those binaries, and hope that you have like custom things for RMM
Yes.
tools and signed binaries like sysinternals tools,
Right. Yeah.
because they're not going to throw a detection
Yes.
when the user
when it's
downloads
assigned one,
them.
right?
Yeah. So,
That's
so yeah,
crazy.
so there's Teams. So that's not really Entra. That's more Teams, Microsoft
Yes. Yeah.
Teams.
But I think it's good for Entra folks and admins to know about it doesn't always have to be Entra. It can be through Teams that they can then come through. So things to be aware of as well.
Yeah, I think Teams is a really, really great attack surface for attackers and probably
Right.
underutilized and will probably be more utilized. So,
Yeah. So you
most
said
organizations.
illicit grant and you were saying there are 5
Yeah, so we have
different types.
Teams.
Yeah.
We just talked about Teams, and there's other ways
Yeah.
that you can do Teams too, but we're not going to talk about that today. Maybe another time.
Yes.
um, but back to Entra. So you have device code phishing, right? And so you've seen that, every threat actor that's even somewhat competent will use device code phishing. Um, because it's so easy to operationalize. And so you see it in the DFIR reports, like from Microsoft and from Mandiant and from Velexity, where attackers are using device code phishing to gain entry. And these are the ones that I'm talking about today are MFA bypasses. They're not bypasses because
Yes.
the protocols are working exactly the way they were designed to work, but it's
Right.
easy to say bypass because that's
Yes.
what gets everybody's attention, and it helps the
That's true.
executives understand,
Yes.
like, "Oh, well, we have MFA. Oh,
Yeah.
but they bypassed it." So, I understand why people say bypass because it's easier for people to conceptualize the threat by saying
Right.
bypass, even though the
Yes.
protocol is working exactly the way it's supposed to. I digress. Sorry, went off on a tangent
Yeah.
there. But back to device code phishing, there are
Yeah.
caps, and Microsoft, I think
Yeah.
it was, this year, you all rolled out the Microsoft, cap
Managed.
for blocking
Yes.
device code phishing, and there's a few challenges with it that a lot of larger organizations face, and that's with Teams phones.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then and then also, uh, if you're doing device onboarding through Intune, sometimes you'll trigger those as well.
Device
So,
code.
it's one of those caps that's really good, but you have to do it really slowly in a phased
Yes.
approach, and you have to
Yeah.
identify your team's phones and where they might be affected, because when you look at the Entra logs for the device code login with teams phones, a lot of times it's going to show in the non-interactive logs, sign-in logs,
Right.
and not
Yeah.
in the interactive sign-in logs. So
Yes.
that makes it challenging for a lot of admins to really troubleshoot, and they just think, oh, the cap is not working, and so they shut it
Yes.
off. And
Yes.
and then you have this huge vulnerability that nation states, ransomware groups, extortion groups,
Yeah.
like Beck actors, everybody's using device code phishing,
Yeah.
right?
And the
So
combination of Teams and device code phishing is even more potent, right? They're using Teams to send a message and a link and then get the person to do what they want them to do.
exactly, exactly. And with AI, it makes it really easy for them to understand how organizations operate and really be effective in impersonating how an organization operates to make it very believable for users. So, so anyway, with device code phishing, there's other things that you can do with device code phishing. I think that they do abide by named locations. So if you have a VPN, I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on it. But, um, but the best way to mitigate the device code phishing is to use the cap and, use your report only mode to figure out, who's going to be affected and when, and phase it out, very slowly,
Right.
until you have the organization covered as much as possible. Because it's such a simple attack.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's a really easy one. Like anyone can try and show it, right? The
Yeah.
the device
Yeah.
code flow.
And then we have the most common one, Adversary-in-the-Middle, basically is reverse proxy phishing. So it's a man in the middle. Basically, an attacker sends somebody a link through whether it's their email, even Teams. Um, they send them a link, and it's really an attacker's link, and then they forward all of the information onto Entra login, and they get the MFA claim, and then,
Exactly. Yeah.
both of them log in. And so the defenses against adversary in the middle are a lot better now. Some of the things that you can do in Entra are device compliance, right? You can do the authentication protocols that are phishing resistant, like
Yes.
FIDO2 and
Yeah.
WebAuthn. So, but the problem is that the threat landscape has evolved now to do
Yes.
authentication downgrades.
Downgrade. Yes.
So, one example of this is where how it changes the flow is the attacker will send the link, right? And when the user clicks the link, before the user clicks the link and it sends it back to Entra, but with a different user agent string that can't enforce the FIDO2 and WebAuthn protocols. So usually organizations will have a backup or a fallback second factor authentication, like a one-time passcode or
Yeah.
SMS or whatever. And
Yes.
so then it triggers those
Yeah.
flows, and the attacker sends that flow back to the user. And if the user doesn't think about it, which they won't, you
Yeah,
know?
it goes from a phishing resistant to a phishable. Like lots of
Exactly.
organizations turn on Hello for Business and they go like, yeah, all my users are now using Hello for Business. But if that man in the middle or adversary in the middle attack does a downgrade with that URL, then instead of using Hello for Business, the user will see like a Teams like a SMS option or text or phone,
Exactly. And then
and
the
then
attacker
they
sends
can
it
get, yeah.
back and they get in because they downgraded the authentication. And the best way to do this, to prevent this in Entra, is to use authentication strengths, right? You can use authentication contexts as well. That's a little bit more advanced for like one discussion, but the authentication strengths in your cat policies, you want to make sure that they can't use those phishable, like even Microsoft Authenticator is even phishable, right? But if you use Microsoft Authenticator with passkeys, then it's not phishable. If you use the FIDO to hard keys, then it's
Sure.
not
Yeah.
phishable. So you want to use those
Yeah.
phishing resistant, where the users only have those options. And I don't see a lot of organizations really doing that because it's going to create a lot of tickets, right? It's going to create a lot of
Yes.
problems
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
IT. So I think that this attack, unless Microsoft comes up with something fancy to fix it, is going to be a long-lived attack.
Yeah, it is a
Um,
hard one. But I would say the best place you can start is at least the privileged roles. And I know of organizations that have done it. So any intra role, any like one organization I know, they said anything one even accessing Azure, we consider it privileged. So if you're signing in, even if it's just to read logs, it's a privileged role. So if you're signing into Azure or you're having any intra role, they've basically forced those users not to have any other auth method. So you can exclude that user from even registering phone SMS. And so they only have phishing resistant auth methods. So if there is a downgrade attack, the user will not be even able to complete the sign in
yeah,
because they have no other
exactly.
choice. Yeah.
Definitely start with the admins, and because we all know that nobody uses a pause. And if they
Yeah.
did, then we wouldn't
Yes.
have to worry about this quite as much,
Yeah.
but I have not met one organization yet that really uses a true pause. So, privileged access workstation for those that might be listening, um, which is a separate hardened workstation, for admins, and their cloud only accounts. But, most organizations don't use a pause, and so admins are clicking email links and doing their regular day-to-day activities on the same workstations that they access Microsoft Cloud admin accounts, and then that becomes a problem because in the fifth way of phishing, which is we want to land on the device. The attacker, they get past the MTAs like Proofpoint, Mimecast, and Exchange Online Protection, and Office 365 Defender, and then they get malware onto the device,
Yes.
right? Um, so if you're not using a pause and then you have that, the attacker is on the device, they're just gonna wait for you to sign in and steal your tokens.
Yes.
To, um, steal your tokens, and then they can use it from that device and then proxy it, through
Yes.
their devices, which you want to make sure your admin computers have EDR that's properly working and test those controls, you
Yes.
know, because hopefully your EDR would detect those attacks. But if the attacker does land on the admin's device, then they will just steal the tokens when the admin elevates their role, even if they are using PIM, and they will still have access as the admin. But you still want to put in your plan authentication contexts, and you still want to put it in your plan and hopefully soon
Yes.
because
Yeah.
most organizations, the blast radius is very large for the data plane when a user gets compromised. And when an
Yes.
attacker compromises a user using a cloud method like adversary-in-the-middle, device code phishing, or illicit consent, what they're going to do is they're going to pull down all the data.
Yes. Yeah.
So whether that's slow, whether that's fast, it's on the threat actor.
Yes.
But
And the more scary ones, or the more mature ones, they actually go into stealth mode. A lot of nation states do that, and they go and hide. So they're hidden and waiting for an opportune time, and you don't even know that they are already in your
exactly.
tenant. So that is like a noisy threat actor is a lot more, a better story for you. You'll
Hmm.
find them and you'll be able to lock them in. But the ones that are the more dangerous ones are the ones you don't even know
Yep.
that they are in your tenant.
Exactly, because they lay
So
low and they're very selective about the things that they touch on the
yes,
endpoint and
yeah,
M365 because they know everything is logged. Everything is logged, and when
yes,
I click on a file, it's logged,
yeah.
or it should be logged.
Yeah, exactly. And they hide, and if it's a year-old account and it does something, you're like, oh, that's always been there. So it's not something new that you feel like it's a threat. It's something that's been there for years, and
Exactly,
you let your guard down on those as well. So yeah, those are the ones you really need to worry about, I would say.
exactly. Yep. So with adversary in the middle, we're still going to see it. Just because even though the defenses are a lot better these days, the way that attackers are delivering them, they're doing browser in the browser attacks, right? And so the
Yes.
way that we have
Yeah.
trained users is to look at the link
Yeah.
and
To look at.
to
Yeah.
look for typo squatting. And what browser in
Yes.
the browser does is it takes that away. And so
Yes.
then it looks exactly like the link is supposed to be, right? So how are they
Exactly.
supposed to
Yeah.
know?
It's yeah.
And
So for
then
those who are listening, I would say our very first podcast episode on IntraChat was with Kuba Gretzky, who is the creator of Evil Jinx, which is a red team tool to sort of make people more aware of these types of attacks and what they can do. And I can remember, like I'm a part of their Discord, so he's very selective about who he gets on the Discord to make sure threat actors don't get
there
in and
too.
they're able to. Awesome. So one day I saw someone had made a fishlet that did the downgrade attack for Hello for
Mhm.
Business, and they shared how that fishlet that allows you to do downgrade, which everyone on the on Discord was really excited when they saw that, because
Mhm.
they could downgrade. So it really helps people learn about this in a real world, like sort of you can show it to people how easy it is to do these sort of downgrades. Like it feels like it's very complex and will take a lot of effort. But with the tools that are available today, it's really really easy to even
Yeah.
do a POC and show people that it can be done in minutes.
Yeah. And even though we're talking about Entra here, people need to realize that it's not just Entra. It's anywhere that an attacker can log in on your perimeter can be targeted by an adversary-in-the-middle attack. So it's not just Entra. So, like, let's say, you're a newer organization and you have your GitHub Pro and it's not behind a proxy and living within the internal network, then that might be targeted. We saw that
Yeah.
with the Salesloft Drift attack where the
Yes.
attacker got into the GitHub, and now you have 700 organizations compromised because
Yes.
of that attack. And I'm not saying that it was an adversary in the middle fish, but it could have been.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't caught up with the news. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But the point is that attackers can use it for the GitHub logins. They can use it for your Salesforce login. They can use it for
Yeah.
any login. It's not just Entra. Entra has ways that you can mitigate it though with
Yes.
conditional access. And so that's the important thing to remember and make sure that you're decreasing your attack surface because initial access is, where you should be focusing the majority of your time, in my opinion. Because if you can prevent them from coming in, or mitigate it to where there's a really small attack surface for initial access vectors coming in, then that really decreases a lot of risk. And, you also have insider threats, especially these days with AI and hiring remote employees that may be working for a different nation state or whatever. And
Yes.
so that type of initial access is different, and that's why assumed breach is still so important because we're seeing
Yes.
that come to surface in the news a lot more lately. So you still have to be thinking from that perspective as well, but from your like ransomware groups, extortion groups, back actors, and even state-sponsored actors that are using things
Yes.
like device code phishing. There's
Yes.
things in Entra that you want to make sure that your caps are adjusted and protecting the organization so that you don't have to deal with those.
Yes. And for those who are wondering what caps are, like, no, it's conditional access policies. Just for
Yeah.
the few folks who have not heard of it in that way. Cool. Awesome. Erica, I think we can spend like hours talking about all of the like
But I think
just
we have a
download.
good talk for
Yeah.
now.
But I do want to ask you, right? Like, how do you like you do a really good job of being able to master things really quickly. Like you just got into Entra, you said in 2022 cloud stuff.
Yeah.
In 3 years, you really really mastered things, and you're in the weeds. You know what works, what doesn't, and not just Entra. Like I know now you are looked at Purview. I know you looked at Power Apps. You message me on lots of things, and a lot of the times when you ask me something, I myself am stumped because I know you done all the work before you come to me. So it's never an easy answer when when you have questions,
Sorry.
and I need to go find the different people to sort of try to get that answer. But I know when you come up with something that it's something that's not there in our docs and so on. So tell us your secret. Like how do you do it? Like, how do you learn, and what are the tips you can share for people
I have no life.
on what the
I'm just kidding. No, it does make it a lot easier because I don't have a family. I don't have kids. So I have a lot of free time that a lot of people don't have. And, I
But I,
recommend living
I
your
I would
life
say
and
there are
having
lots of
work-life
people.
balance.
Yeah, but that's just one part of it, right? Like we all have time, and like even if you have the time, we still find it hard to sort of read things and retain and remember them and be able to sort of connect the dots. And you do it like sort of very effortlessly. How I would want to say.
I spend a lot of time with it, an incredible amount of time with it. So, all right. let me talk about how I learned
Yeah.
M365 in
Yes.
Azure. So in 2022, I did that. I pulled down the sys benchmarks and I read them, I don't know,
Right.
30 times. I'm not kidding.
Right.
So, and I got my test tenant. Back
Right.
then we had the
So for
dev tenant.
reference, what is sys benchmark for those who don't know? It's
So there are security controls, and you can actually map them to various compliance frameworks as well. The sys benchmarks are really great guiding point. You can implement them wherever possible if you're a smaller org, but the larger the organization gets, the more complexity you have with third-party solutions and integrations. So a lot of times they don't work. Or sometimes they may not be the perfect guidance, but they're a great
right.
starting
But
point
they're
to
good
learn.
point. Like you can read a lot about the different configurations and why they're important and where you need to go and tweak them, right? To harden
Exactly.
things, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So you went
So
through you read
mhm.
all of that because then you go right straight to the point of what are the things, the knobs that you would
Yep,
need
I
to
went in and
configure,
clicked all the
right?
buttons and the knobs,
Right.
and, I implemented all of the sys benchmarks and test
Okay.
tenants. I implemented quite a few of them in security engineering engagements with work, not all
Right.
of them, of course.
Yeah.
I do recommend all of them wherever possible, but you have to assess,
Yes.
where it's possible.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the
So work
practical
for
side
your
of it,
org.
right? Yeah,
Right,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
After that, I started doing the offensive courses. Pond Labs has a great offensive course that focuses a lot on Entra
right.
and Azure side of the house. Altered Security was probably the best that I went to
Okay,
because I did Cart P and Cart E when they first came out, which is adversarial tradecraft that is happening in the real world today, right now.
yes, yeah.
It is very good, and these attacks basically, I replicated their lab, built my own cloud infrastructure with attack tools and my own attack tenant,
That awesome.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Nikhil,
so
so Nikhil Nikhil from Altered Security. Yeah, I've chat with him, and he
great.
sponsored the Entra newsletter as well. So like, yeah, they're really like I'm even interested in taking over their courses and learning how you secure Entra from
I highly
that point
recommend
of view.
it just because
Yeah,
the attacks that they discuss are things that every organization is struggling with around the world right now. And it is the real threat landscape. It is real.
right. Yeah,
There's nothing in there that is not real, and
right,
that I haven't seen in real life and replicated in real life and POC'd in real life, to organizations to either come up with better defenses, and detection engineering, or to put in mitigations like conditional access policies or different, tenant-wide settings that can decrease blast radius and whatnot. So we have Altered Security did those labs, and those were very good. We have Pond Labs, and then I did all of the Microsoft Learning. And SC300 took me forever. Oh my god.
right.
SC300.
I nearly failed that exam, which is the identity exam.
Yeah. So SC300 is a Microsoft certification for identity and access management, and they have I have my Microsoft Cloud profile, certification profile, and I don't do the certifications. I just do all the learning modules, and then I apply them to my tenants because I have test tenants. I I have a business premium tenant with security and compliance and mobility add-on for all of the purview features and the Intune security features and everything because I need those to be able to test in my own environment. Um, but I do all of those, and I don't just, like, read through the modules, I actually go into the tenant and point and click and make sure that I understand, what it's talking about. I set up a lot of infrastructure, I've set up a lot of tenants, attack tenants for different engagements. I set up a new one every
Right.
time when I would
Okay.
do purple team engagements.
Right. So what I'm hearing is like go hands on and do those things, right? Like going through your tenants and just reading is not going to be enough to be able to master things.
No, you have to have hands-on, and I've been really fortunate to, work with a lot of consultancies where I've been able to see a lot of organizations, about 30 different tenants now, and the various configurations that they have and third-party solutions they have implemented and integrations and whatnot, so, um, that is really, really helpful.
Yes.
But I know a lot of people, they work for a big org, they stay in the same role for 15 years, and they don't get that experience where they see, all of
Yeah.
the different tenants,
Right. Yeah.
so and the different configurations that they might be in, so that has been incredibly helpful. I always spend longer than what I'm supposed to on my engagements, even though we are scoped for so many hours,
Right.
um, and I don't spend longer because I have to. I do it because I have the opportunity in somebody's
Yes.
organization to learn
Yeah. There's
how
so
they
much you
did
can learn.
things.
That's true.
Exactly. So, that's why I spend more time because I'm learning how people are doing things so that I can assess the overall, like, this is what happens in 90% of tenants. This is what happens in some tenants. This is,
Yeah.
you
And I
see the
think so.
same
I
things
would
over
say,
and over
yeah.
again.
Yeah. I think the trait, what you're saying is being curious, right? Like just pulling on a thread and why is this tenant different, and going deep into that because it's an opportunity to learn. Like it's not every day you get to go
Exactly.
into a tenant and see what's happening there. So every new tenant you come across, you're trying to get the maximum. You're trying to learn from each tenant. So okay, so now I'm starting to form a picture of, how somebody can master Entra, like being exposed to lots of different types of tenants and teams and different cultures and how they work are sort of unique things which you get to see and you're making the most of that time.
Yep. Definitely. And I've worked with a lot of different stakeholders across the organizations as well, whether it's I work a lot with identity and access management teams, directors of security, CISOs. And sometimes I'll go through other stakeholders as well, like the purview. It's really funny to me. Organizations, they have the data plane and the identity and access management plane and security operations all separate silos. And those are the
That's
teams that need
always
to be working together.
yes. It's just the org chart, right? They're all broken into different org charts, and yeah, they
Yeah,
don't. Sometimes they don't even know that the person even exists, right? Like
exactly.
your compliance. What does compliance do? Like I don't even know what that means.
Exactly. It's so siloed still. And that, I understand separation of duties, but
Yes.
that is, in my opinion, a killer of collaboration. And when you can't, M365 is an ecosystem of
Yes.
all interworking parts. You don't have this admin center over here does this and doesn't interact with this admin center over here, which does this and doesn't. It's not like that.
It's not.
It's an
Yeah.
entire ecosystem of
They're all
interworking parts.
connected.
And so
Yeah.
your organization should reflect that and have communication and collaboration across the stakeholders because we understand the larger the tenant, we have to
Yes.
have more narrowly defined roles that can specialize and be able to handle the workload. But at the same time, you need to know how the tenant is working as a whole to be
Yes.
able to effectively defend against modern attacks.
Nice. Awesome. That's such an amazing question to how you mastered. And I think you covered a lot of things, right? Like being curious, being able to, go and learn from be able to read the different docs and trying out things like the altered security and those other things.
Yeah.
So, uh, yes, lots of awesome advice from someone who has done it, right? Like the proof is that I can, like, every time Erica says something, I know she's always done her homework. She knows it all inside out and is trying
We all have
to,
knowledge gaps, all of us, and me
yeah.
especially. And if it wasn't for people like you and Nathan McNulty and Fabian Bader and Jen Baker
Yeah, and
and
that's the other thing. Asking questions is the other one, right?
Mhm.
Like asking and trying to learn from anyone. Like no one really all know the answer. So being able to build that community and be able to, draw from that community and help each other out is the other thing, right? It's not always take, like it's sharing that knowledge with others when they ask things that you can help answer.
Yep, exactly. I have had been very blessed to have a lot of mentors, and so I'm very thankful for people like you and Nathan McNulty who are always there to answer my questions and then I try to share whenever I can. So yeah,
Nice.
it's a journey, right? It's a
Yes,
marathon, it's not a
absolutely.
race.
It is. That is true. Awesome. Erica, so it's been so much fun, and I really, really want to thank you for coming on. It's such a really early hour for you, and we had to repeat part of the recording as well. So thank you so much for your patience. Really appreciate it. And you shared a lot of good gems today, and I know there's lots of things people took away from this chat that they will go and try out and practice, from Hack the Box to learning from taking, downloading that, going through those. Lots of good stuff. Thank you so much for coming in, sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. So great to talk to you in person or
Yes,
on
and
video.
for me to see you in see who the Erika is, so, and for the world to see as well. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for tuning in.
See you all on X, where Erika hangs out a lot, and now you're on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn too. So thanks a lot.